So she was telling us that she was going to be flying to Montana, when in reality she would be in St. Louis, Missouri. Keep in mind, she's only now a few months out of the state mental hospital, still a child, multiple men who we have found absolutely no. We're talking showers and I mean it's there was a whole ton of self-created things. Um, and it was all through uh TikTok and Snapchat. So we're able to identify, I think at that point, 2 or 3 of the men, one of whom was a military police officer in the military in St. Louis, Missouri, who was the main consumer, I would say, her main contact, and who had convinced her to get a one-way ticket to St. Louis, Missouri on the morning of her 18th birthday so that her parents couldn't stop her.
Oh my.
Right, and I just went, if I wasn't helpless and powerless before, now I have a full understanding of what kind of trauma she's going through, and I really am helpless and powerless here. What can I do? So we realized that we needed to get more information about these other men if we were ever going to get any sense of justice for the police. So we had to just pretend to play dumb. She couldn't know what we knew or that we knew anything. And we just had to let it all keep happening so that we could keep gathering the data. Um, and as you know, a lot of the, like with Snapchat and things, you would think, well, how much data do you need? Well, they don't use their real name. They don't use their real location. There's hardly any identifying information. So a lot of it was just hoping that he would discuss something in his area or use his real name instead of a nickname or some kind of identifying info. And it just got closer and closer and closer to her being 18 and her, you know, she didn't have a job, she didn't have money, she didn't know people there. Like we kept saying, well, what are you going to do when you get there? I don't know. I'll figure it out. And just would refuse to give us information. And I had a lot of high hopes for her 18th birthday. You know, this is my princess. This is my daughter. This is my angel. I want to celebrate these milestones. And instead, I just know that she's headed out to a sex trafficker who started grooming her as a child. This is how she's going to spend her 18th birthday. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. But I also had no ability to stop it because 18 years old. So we devised a plan. We thought, listen, you can't get on the plane if you don't have an ID. So we fought her in the morning to discombobulate, and then we capitulated and went, fine, but we're driving you. And if we're gonna go, we're gonna go now. And I had taken her ID off of her dresser and hid it somewhere else in her room so that it wasn't gonna be right there for her to remember. But I also didn't take it so it wouldn't be kidnapping or like I had to stay legal too, right? I'm now no longer able to do anything. So she so we rush her into the car and zip her down to Vegas where my sister lived. And she's gonna stay the night with my sister. My sister will take her to the airport in the morning, and then she gets on a plane to go to Montana to go look at being a police officer, right? She hasn't graduated high school. She's completely dropped out. She's fresh out of the mental institution, a 10-month stay, and, dead in the middle of her recapitulation of trauma. Like, she's the most at-risk person. Like, this is how people become homeless. Like, this is how it happens. So
And
I, right,
complicating situations that they never thought that they could be in.
right.
Yeah,
That it is still coercive, is still sex abuse, is still all of that. Mhm.
absolutely.
So, that week, um, that week, they were able to arrest the man in St. Louis. I think it was, like, 2 days before her flight, they were able to arrest him, and the police told us when they arrested him that they'd confiscated all of his devices. They found way worse on his devices with way more children other than her. So he would not be there at the airport to meet her, and she wasn't about to tell us what was going on. And, we had tried so hard to convince her that she shouldn't do it, and she was just determined, right? Um, you understand. You understand being determined to outsmart your parents and get yourself into this situation? So I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so like" yes. So
It's how it happened.
so it began to work. She forgot her ID. Yeah, she got down to my sister's house, and we turned around and drove home. So now we're out. Vegas was the nearest big airport. So now we're hours away from home or away from the airport, and we're getting ready for bed, feeling good, kind of patting ourselves on the back. And my husband goes, "What are the chances that you can board an airplane without your ID?" And I was like, "Oh, at this point, we don't have enough time to drive down there and stop it, right? We're now hours away and no ability to anything. If we wanted to kidnap her, we couldn't." So we called down to the airport and they said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely, no problem. You can get on a plane, no ID." And I was like, "Not the answer I wanted. Please, no." And they said, "Yeah, so basically we just ask you like 9 questions about your identity out of a possible 30. Like there's 30 standard questions. We choose 9 at random and you have to answer 7 of them right. Like your name, your address, who are your parents." And I'm like, "So, as long as you know who you are, you can just, like, get on a plane." And they were like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." And I just freaked, right? I lost it. And, my husband did too, and they said, "Well, what's going on?" And we kind of explained it, and they said, "Oh, you need to talk to our human trafficking division, the police." And we were like, "Yes, please. Yeah, we don't know this, right?" So,
Right.
we called, we called and talked to they have Las Vegas Metro has and this is the part that I wanted you to hear. This was what I had come up to you to express. Um, the backstory is also very, very, I don't know, it connects as well. There's a lot to be learned there too. But the part that I specifically had come up to talk to you.
You're giving a very specific story of online grooming, and
Mhm.
now it's going to lead into trafficking where the person has no idea, the child, the young
Mhm.
the queen, the teen,
The teenager.
yeah, the teenager, no idea what's going to actually happen because they are no match for the military
Right.
man, adult who's been not only grooming them, but convincing her that that they have a relationship, even though they've never met each other in
Right.
person. She's done all the videos, she's done all the showers, she's done whatever. And all of a sudden, this is the most common. I mean, not that your story is common, but it's a very
No, right.
process that ends in trafficking. We again, the Hollywood movie is, oh, there's a white van and somebody kidnaps a child and
That's right.
planning, gives them drugs, and now they're in, a foreign country, and that's trafficking. I'm like, no, no, no.
No.
This, I mean, yes, that's trafficking too, and I'm sure that that happens, but this happens at a much
Yeah.
greater rate where you are groomed into a relationship that is going to now turn the corner into trafficking.
Only benefit the person, and also you have to turn over your power to the person.
Yes.
Um, and in the person who's being trafficked's mind, there are cases where they don't know they're being trafficked. The whole why didn't you ask for help? Because you don't know you want it, because you can't imagine what may be out there because you buy into the story that's being sold, who the person is and why he's a great person and all these admirable qualities and the attention that you feel seen and validated and loved, especially when being neurodivergent or adopted, you're now at risk of not having that just automatic feeling of belonging or, whatever. So all these things sort of put her more at risk because she's already dealing with that level. There's already that button that can be pushed and leaned on.
Right.
And I say too, like, you know, it, there's no such thing as a shortcut because if it was really shorter, it would just be called the way. The way is the way because it works. So yes, this is the way it progresses because this is the way that works to get what a child or to feed that sexual need. This is the it doesn't have to be a child. Technically she was 18 at this point in the morning. So we call the right now it's called Las Vegas Harry Reid. At the time it was McCarran. We call the airport and find out that there is a unit, like there's actual police station in the airport. and that there within that police station is a unit specifically trained to deal with human trafficking because Las Vegas is the human trafficking hub of the entire United States. Like, that is the biggest problem, and it's there, like, just a few hours
Yeah.
from me. Terrifying, right? Like, in a matter of an hour, you can be anywhere. And I just went, "What do we do?" And they said, "Well, send us some pictures. We have, you know, like, facial recognition software. We're gonna upload it. Is there identifying marks and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Yeah, but she's 18." And they said, "Oh, no, that doesn't matter." And I was like, "How how does that not matter? Because 'Cause I'm suddenly not in control anymore. I can't keep my child safe. She can ruin her life if she wants to." And they said, "No, that's not how this works." Um, in Las Vegas, because we have such a human trafficking problem, we actually have a protocol. And again, this was a few years ago, so you may want to fact check how it is now, but um, anyone can call them if they suspect anyone else of being trafficked for any reason. Stranger, old person, young person, child, it does not matter. If you see something that doesn't sit right with you, if you're suspicious, even if you don't know the person you're reporting, even if you're just looking across the airport and go, "That's not right," you call and you report it to that airport unit, and the officers will go locate that person that you have suspected of being a victim, and they will not let them board their flight until or unless that person is able to firmly convince the officers that they are not being trafficked. So here are these officers trained to spot human trafficking, and you need to convince them you're not being trafficked. They already know what to watch for, they know what excuses you're gonna give, they know the way, they know exactly what all of these red flags are, and, you'll just miss your flight. They'll just sit there and keep you questioned, you won't be able to get on the flight. You'll have to make other arrangements, like, it's that impulse of, like, get the thing, get on the plane. There's now this delay that they're asking you questions, maybe you're starting to think, maybe now you don't have money to do it, right? Like, it puts bigger distance between you and the ability to be trafficked. Even if you made it through that interview,
Right.
they'll just hold you there. Um,
Like suicide ideation,
End
it's
result,
time.
mhm,
If there's time, if there's a little bit of time between
absolutely.
that moment of decision and when they actually
Uh-huh.
can find some
The delays.
time, a delay
Mhm.
that is allows some other things to come into play. And in that mean bit of
Yes.
time, some things happened that were very good that you
Huh.
didn't even know existed. It's amazing.
Right. Right. So the biggest point of all of this was get the tracking on your children's cell phone, talk to their teachers and understand that they may not be being marked absent. In the end, we called my daughter, and because I thought she's an actress, she'll be able to convince them. She will, right? They won't be able to hold her because she hasn't committed a crime. Um, and we called her, we're like, "Hey, we just got back and we were kinda cleaning up your room because we do that, she's a teenager, and noticed that you left your ID here. You're not gonna be able to fly without your ID." And she was like, "Oh, no. Well, can you drive it down to me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but even if I do, I'm not gonna make it there in time. I would love to drive it down to you," you know?
Yeah.
Hint, hint.
Right.
Not really, but, like, sure. I need to be the good mom that she feels that she can keep relying on me. And I was like, and she's just, like, beyond beside herself, "What am I gonna do?" Meanwhile, I know that she's been losing her mind because for the last 2 days, he hasn't been responding to her, and she's about to fly out, and he's not talking because he's in jail. She doesn't know this. She just is like, all of a sudden, he's ghosted her. So she's already like, but once she's committed, like, if you know neurodivergence, once you think a thing needs to be done, you have to do it before you can move on to the other thing. Like, that's a thought process as well. So, I understood that that was kind of how her brain worked, that she was going to be, that it was compulsory that she get on this plane and complete this, you know, get closure or whatever it was. And regardless if no one was answering her, she would just trust that they would show up because I have always showed up. Everyone in her life has always showed up. Um, so she just trusted that everyone would show up. And I just went, "You can't board a plane without your ID. They won't let you." She's like, "What am I gonna do?" And I was like, "Well, if you wait too much longer, you won't be able to get a refund. Why don't you hurry and call and cancel it, and then you can get a refund, and maybe just take this week that you were going to be in Montana and just hang out with my sister, Michelle, who, had lived with us when she was a teenager, so it was kind of like my daughter's big sister, but my
Yeah.
little sister, like, she was born when I was a senior in high school. Um,
Okay.
and she lived with us for, like, all of her high school years. So Autumn
Young
or sorry. Yeah. She grew up with this young, cool aunt who lives in Vegas, who is not like her mom, you're right, she gets me. And I was just like, "Let's hurry and get you a refund," and she's like, "I don't know how, will you do it for me?" "Absolutely, gladly, I would love to do that for you. I'm here for you, I support you. Let me get this refund of your ticket," you know? What by the way, what is your login to your email so I can do this? Weaponized incompetence. Weaponized
Well,
incompetence. Uh, and she had changed passwords and stuff, and so then I got all of her new passwords, and anyway, I think we just pretended that we didn't know any better and that we shouldn't be monitoring her because we had Spicy. I was like, "I need to let her have this cell phone because if I try to control this cell phone, she's just gonna go find another one." So,
yeah, she'll go deeper under.
I had not taken her cell phone. Right,
Yeah.
I needed to leave that cell phone in place so that I could continue to monitor it. So she spent a week with, my sister, had an amazing time, really connected, felt refreshed. We drove down to pick her up and she kind of
Time did you call your
still didn't know what was going on. Oh, yes,
sister
yes,
now?
yeah, my sister knew. Mhm, my sister knew, and she was like, "I won't lie to her, I won't whatever," but we had said, "If we can stop her from getting on that plane, can she stay with you for a week? Can you help us convince her that that's what she wants instead?" And it wasn't successful until he wasn't answering her, and we reminded her that she couldn't get on the plane without her ID, quote, unquote, right? That's it wasn't real, but she would believe it. It's a believable thing that would be like, "Well, you can't do it anyway, so, here's a better alternative," and luckily, she was smart enough to do that.
Mm.
Um, lots more has happened, but the drowning, disabled her, the lack of oxygen disabled her, it affected her frontal lobe, her decision-making skills, and um her ability to understand that A leads to B, right? Like, what is
Okay.
the end result of these things that I'm making, these choices I'm making? So, um,
Just it doesn't
we
really
have a
grow up. That talk about that. That's the last part piece that really develops,
Mhm.
which is why teenagers walk out in moving traffic. They don't understand the consequences.
Yes.
Really, I mean, they heard that a car could hit me, but it won't. It's that ability
Mhm.
to understand consequence doesn't happen, and it doesn't fully develop until that
No,
what age
no,
25. That has been paired for her for forever because of the drowning
forever.
incident.
Mhm. Yeah, and she's had 2 more traumatic brain injuries since then. Um, uh, there's there's kind of a lot that's happened and people go, "How is she doing?" And I'm like, "She's disabled," because although we're headed in a good direction, her health and her mental state is extremely fragile, and at any point, anything could spin it in the wrong direction. But what we have is extremely open communication. Last time that she ended up feeling suicidal, she called me and said, "You need to come home. I need you to get all this stuff out of my room." And it was a med reaction, but her thought was, "Please help me not kill myself. I need your help getting all this stuff and keeping me safe." She does still live with us. She did move out and live, independently for a little while, but, some things have happened and there was a car accident that was one of the traumatic brain injuries, and so as she's kind of recuperating from that and regrouping and sort of refiguring out which direction she wants to take her life, I've just said, "Listen, like, live with us as long as you want. You're not, um It's not like you're a drain on my resources, like, you're my only child. Obviously, I wanna see you succeed, but if you get out there too quickly, too soon, without enough resources and tools, that's gonna guarantee your failure. So let's get everything in a row, let's figure it out, let's find a good place, let's get you through high school, let's, um let's get a lot of this trauma healed so that when you're out there on your own, the likelihood of you succeeding is high, but also there's no such thing as failure. There is, you regroup. You can't fail at being an adult because an adult is an age. And,
Yeah.
you're out there just trying to live. And so that's what happened with me. But the things that I connected with you was I picked up on your neurodivergence and went, of course she believed that. I picked up on your parents' neurodivergence and went, of course they trust. Of course they absolutely built their reality on the fantasy of a social contract that really doesn't exist. There's no guarantee of that social contract, of how people should behave or whatever. And if you have always been safe your entire life, you can't imagine being unsafe so that you're not able to prepare for being unsafe. You don't see that coming, just like you wouldn't check under your office chair for a bomb every morning when you go to work because it's
Right.
unconceivable.
You just wouldn't. That's not gonna
Right.
happen to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
We can
that's
go back.
but it doesn't happen to anyone. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what your belief is. Yeah. It's interesting because I see those things that you're, pointing to, and I'm like, just to know that there are units in at least at the Las Vegas airport and, Nevada, the age of consent is 16, which I think is terrible.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah.
it's interesting that they have that. That makes me feel really happy. I just flew in and out of there just a couple days ago, and, they have the signs on the back of every stall,
Mhm.
trafficking, and there's also bigger signs like
Sure.
that say something different that as you walk into the
Mhm.
bathroom so that people can actually see them. So I think it's interesting that they're trying to make it harder even for the trafficker because they're realizing, "Oh, this place actually sees me." And this person that's walking into the bathroom, if you are not in control of what you can do next, it said something like that on the poster. It was like as you walked into the
Mhm.
bathroom, not what's on the back of the bathroom stall, which was definitely a picture of
Mhm.
somebody being trafficked, in a corner, kind of a scary. But that was
Right. The Hollywood.
yeah.
Hollywood trafficking.
Yeah, but it was good because it was like, if it looks like this, like somebody with a suitcase, pulling a suitcase and a cute pair of shorts and a t-shirt. But the thing was, if you don't have control over where you're going next, you could be a victim of human
A
trafficking,
victim of
something like
trafficking.
that. I was like, that's interesting because those are new. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah.
And
Because the signs only help people who know.
right, exactly. They only help people who know. So for those of us who are already hyper interested and trying to be hyper vigilant about things like this, it's great to learn something new that there are, police departments and police units that are being put into play in hubs that have, I mean, I think there's problems with trafficking probably in every airport across the world,
Mhm.
but especially we know that that one is really, really a serious
Right.
issue. So if you were to like advise, in trying to, sharing this story and advising parents, you've pretty much gone through several things. You've gone through know what's being taught to your child and make sure
Mhm.
that you are in agreement, which is really hard to do on a religious,
That is.
because you have different like in the LDS church, people are volunteers. They're not paid clergy. They get hey, we're going to ask you to teach this Sunday school or this group of young women or whatever for a period of time. And people use their own take on something, like, well,
Their own
you know, we're
biases,
gonna
their own
teach-
beliefs.
yeah. And so you
Yeah.
don't get an
They're
opportunity to go, okay, you know, how could that affect my child? You don't think about
right.
you're doing religion usually because you think of what it provides for a young person or yourself in the way of, okay, I have a pathway, I know what's right and wrong, I can, kind of
It's as trustworthy as God. right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you gonna be like, "All right, God says this, let me check and see if that's right."
Right.
Right? You know?
Right. God is kind of like the fail safe for anybody to brainwash you. If you can convince the person that
Mhm.
this is what God said. That's why I think it's really important to
Right.
check your beliefs and to check your um the people around, that are imparting those beliefs and finding out, do I want my child to be, and not that you'll know everything, because of course you were a hyper vigilant, wonderful parent, and you didn't know that she
Oh,
had had
thank you.
this lesson that affected her so much. And so that was one thing. I think that's really important, because I think that as much as a faith, some kind of faith-based system can be really comforting at times and for people in different ways and give you, a direction and remind you to be, kind and to serve and to
Uh-huh.
do, be honest, whatever. And those are good things.
Right.
There is also another component to that where if you're not taught to ask questions and to be curious and to have deep conversations, to ask
Yes.
your parents, like, well, this is what my teacher said. Should I take that to heart or not? We don't have conversations like that. Doesn't matter what religion you are. Most people
Right.
don't test that out. That's important. The other thing that you said,
That's really important.
you yeah, I think that's one of the main takeaways from here, and also that you should know that your kids can find other ways, even if you are really vigilant about their cell phones and what programs they have on it, they can just sign up for another app and get a different phone, or not even a different phone. And most parents are not that vigilant anyway. So
Right.
knowing that there is so much harm that can happen, that's a huge takeaway. You better get curious and interested and figure out technology. I'm speaking to myself.
Well, as I say, it's not so much figuring out technology because I had technology figured out. It's that you need to understand, that well, a big thing is that knowing technology isn't the thing that's going to keep you safe. Trusting that you know technology, you're checking your child's phone, they haven't installed Snapchat. My daughter would uninstall it and then reinstall it, and then uninstall it and then
Right.
reinstall it, you know?
Okay. Yes.
So knowing technology, that is the fallacy that I trusted in.
Yeah.
Understanding that knowing technology isn't going to keep you safe is the thing. The technology surpasses your ability to control technology.
So what would be like, how would you
Okay,
okay.
so I know that takes away your power, right? So,
Yeah, but it's
um,
like, what would
mm,
be the next step for a parent who understands technology but isn't sure that they know how to read? I mean, you're not going to know all the time because kids are crafty too. They're tricky.
right,
um,
right. So a couple of things that I would do differently. I would
okay.
probably allow a cell phone with the same rules earlier. I would not delay it later, and I'll tell you why. Because that forced her to go underground with her social media and technology. I would allow it sooner and have Spicy on there from the very beginning, just like eventually I let her have the cell phone so that I could gather data. Because what you don't want is their ability to hide the data from you, because she didn't have a cell phone and she was still being victimized at school, right? On a
Right.
school computer or a library computer or anywhere you log in. So the problem is that the lesson here is you cannot control technology. You cannot necessarily
Right.
learn technology. Um, but you need to understand that they will find a way to the it's too tempting, they're going to find a way
Yeah.
out. This is now, you know,
Just
this is now just the way. Mhm. So understanding, getting yourself the most amount of information about the technology that your children are being able to use without them knowing how much information you have about. And I'm not like, yes, spy on your children and blah 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 blah. But like obviously some parents are like, oh, that's an invasion of privacy, and I don't care. I don't care how invaded my daughter felt about her privacy. Yeah.
Yeah, from a younger age. I think that's really interesting. And I also think that what you're saying about how you responded to what you were finding out was not to have a knee-jerk reaction to just go and,
Mhm.
you know, attack her, like, as if
Right.
she were the problem. You knew she was
Right.
the problem. You know that the problem is the perpetrators. You know that the
Yes.
problem are the people that are the online,
Mhm.
predators who are getting her to do things that she otherwise would not have done, and that she has a certain, like all teenagers and all young people do. There's a certain need to fit in, to belong, to please, to do things a certain way, especially with the neurodivergent
Mhm.
piece that
Yep.
she carried as well. So knowing a little bit more about that and how to see that and know that about your child so that you would know they are more susceptible, because that is a more susceptible category of people who are catfished and who are duped and conned and perpetrated upon, because perpetrators seem to know that. It's like we're wearing a neon sign or something like, hi,
Yeah.
hi,
Yeah. No, it is.
will be her, and that will do whatever you say eventually, because I'm brainwashable. That's what
So
it's like. No.
so I you if you remember the Nemo thing, they're like, "Hoo ha ha, shark bait." The shark bait is his
Yeah.
nickname. So, my other sister tends to have more of this neurodivergence plus low self-esteem equals predator candy. Like that's so I call her narc bait instead of shark bait
Uh,
because yes,
it
they'll throw out a little thing and see how you respond. And if you gobble that up, well, hello there, right?
Yeah.
Aren't you a beautiful, darling person? Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And that's how the other thing is he would show up to my house having just abused her to say, "Look what I can do in front of the people who are supposed to protect you." So
Yeah.
she had no belief that I would be able to protect her. And that was the other component. So sorry, you were asking some questions.
No, that was
What
really
would
good.
I
You're just really trying to capitalize on all of this amazing information that's contained within your story and your daughter's story. And it's also the fact that when someone so brazenly does that, like they show up, it's and
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh my gosh." Like they'll say this to me like, "There was nobody else in the world like him. He was so brazen. He was so like it was like out in
Mhm.
front." I'm like, most most actual predators who are serial in nature, who have a victim that they have already, and they're working on the next one, just like the guy that had all
Right.
other things that, I mean, obviously it had been an
Right.
severe
Right.
or
There she was one.
I said,
Right.
yeah, they're brazen because they know how to work the system. They know how to work the individuals. They just They just know how to do it. They can get away with it, and they already have. And so they're very brazen people, and I don't.
Right. Well, it's the way because it worked. No.
That's right.
No. So teach your children to cook for themselves.
Mhm.
Teach your children to do their chores. Teach your children how to spot a narcissist. Teach your children about
Mhm.
enthusiastic consent and start from the time they are from the beginning of puberty. Here is your body and here are the ways that people will try to use it. And this is what that can look like.
Yeah.
And
Another
I
thing we're gonna do is we're gonna have you create a course. So Cheryl's gonna get a course
Sure.
for all of us.
Sure.
Right. So these conversations that we hear about, that we know we should have, or we kind of think we did, but maybe not. Maybe I'll just let their older sister or brother kind of, or maybe their best friend, or we really need to get specific and get the moral code that's in the way out of
Right.
the way. We
Judgment
could
out of the way. These are children.
and out of the way. Yes, and we
Right.
can really
Mhm.
have the conversation so that they will know at least a little bit more. They're still
Mhm.
going to be teenagers. They're still going to be, I already know everything and I don't need to listen to you. They're going to be developmentally at the
Right.
kind of the middle in their life. developmentally, they're not going to be able to
Mhm.
maneuver, which is why we have to educate ourselves and why that's such an important component of our foundation is education and awareness, especially about grooming and manipulation, because that's where it all starts. And
Yes.
we're going to try to teach teenagers what that is and what that looks like and what narcissism looks like and what a narcissistic personality disorder looks like and what a psychopath looks like and what a sociopath looks like and how a groomer works and how a sexual predator operates. We're going to try.
Mhm.
But unless the adults in our children's lives are willing to open their eyes and look and then report, pick up the phone,
Yes.
FIZ, wear on
Yes.
their phones, and do the
Mhm.
hard work of adult
Ask the hard question.
tech. Yes, it's just not it won't change very much. We have to have everyone signed up for that. Do you know what I mean? And
She was in therapy. She could have told people. Had been in therapy for years. Like, there it was active treatment for, I called him when she was little, I called them her life coaches. Like, you have a coach that coaches you basketball and teaches you basketball skills, and then you have a coach at life that teaches you life skills. What I didn't say is, did you hear anything at church today that made you feel uncomfortable or that you maybe disagreed with, that hit you sideways and you're not really sure why? Was there anything that happened at school that made you feel uncomfortable, or is there anything in your friend group that you're just not happy with how it's going and it just, you kinda just feel yucky, but it's not that anything's wrong, but it's just, hitting you sideways, or it just puts you in a weird mood, and, just teaching them how to identify that, and, "Hey, is there anything in your life that you could just wave a magic wand and change?" Right? And even go so far as to, like, we're gonna put on the cone of silence, start when they're little and do, like, the whole cone of silence thing and be like, "All right, real life is out there. Tell me anything you want," and it stays right in the cone of silence and, that sort of thing. Or, um, you know, just have you heard anything that upset you, or what have you seen today that disturbed or upset you? And they might say that it was a joke, or they might say that it was, um, that somebody had made a comment or brushed against them in a way that they couldn't tell if it was intentional, but it made them feel gross, right? Is anything happening that makes you feel uncomfortable? And it can't be a, "Is this happening?" Because it happens all day, every day, in every type of way, small and big and everything. And I think it needs to be as good as, "Did you eat your peas? Did you do your homework? Who made you feel uncomfortable today and why? What did you hear?" And that's just an everyday conversation of, tell me what things you think can't change. Because it's like, well, what would you change? Well, if they don't think it can change, they're not gonna even bring it up. So what's something that you don't like that you don't think can be changed? Um, and those types of just questions, and yeah, that's what I would do differently. I would, anytime they're in another adult's presence, I would absolutely say, instead of, "How did it go? Did you have fun? Did you get in trouble?" I would be like, "Hey, was anything said or done while you were away from me that made you feel uncomfortable or unsafe in any way?" Or even if it felt like it was being nice, if you just didn't like it. Um, Another thing that happened to my daughter that was weird, when she was a toddler, grown adult men would come up to us in public and tell her she's pretty and give her money, and I didn't know how to handle that. Like, it was so just like, I mean, they're being nice, but that's predatory. That's not being nice, but it appears nice. So you don't feel comfortable or comfortable. Give her money. "You're such a beautiful little girl. Here's a quarter." And I don't wanna, like, take a quarter from my 4-year-old, like, right?
right, go to the little
Um
ball machine and order in and turn the wheel and see
Mhm.
to get a prize kind of thing. That's really interesting that they would the money part, especially. I get you
Mhm.
know, over, the over complimenting a child
Right.
can be uncomfortable to the child, and it can be predatory, and it can be innocent too, both things. And so it's a really hard to maneuver those, but what you wanna do is you wanna gut check your child is what you're saying. You wanna see what they felt.
Yes.
Did you like
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
Aunt
This
so said, "Give me a kiss right here, and now one right here, and now one right here." Did that tell me if any of that made you feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable because you want them to identify when something is hitting them, like you said, sideways. I
Uncomfortable.
love that. I think that's really
And again, they're not gonna identify it as something bad happened or something was
right,
wrong, right?
right,
Um, or I heard something I disagree with, or it doesn't make sense, or, you know, it made me sad to hear this. Like, there's other terminology and ways they process it. Like you said, they don't know their that sign, it's for the people who know they're being trafficked, right? The children don't know they're being groomed. So they're not going to be able to use the language that we think we could use to help identify if they're being groomed. Did anything terrible happen at school today? No, a man was really nice and gave me money and told me I was pretty. Right? Like, that's not a terrible thing in a child's mind.
right.
But
And
that is what I would do different.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up our conversation today. Is there anything else on your your heart or your mind or your gut you want to share before we wrap it up? I felt like we really gave some amazing examples for other other
Thank you.
parents, for people, just adults in general, and for other survivors too. Those that listen to the podcast are usually people that have you know, suffered through some kind of traumatic experience. And because they're all different, we're all looking at ways that we can heal. And when we hear, this from a mother's perspective and what you did do, and still to have so many things happen, it can be like discouraging almost. But at the same
It
time, it's how we learn, how we get better.
Right. There's never gonna stop being predators. We're never gonna eliminate it 100%. I think that there needs to be I feel like, Sandra Bullock when I say harsher penalties for parole violators, Stan. But I do believe there needs to be harsher penalties for, any sort of, abuse. Because right now, there's no way to prove emotional abuse, so there's not really a way to prosecute emotional abuse. So there needs to be protocols in place to identify this sort of thing. There needs to be harsher penalties for those who violate it. Like, I don't think that anyone who harms a child should ever see a day out of prison again, period.
Yeah.
End of story. That's it. I'm sorry. Like, I don't have any. Yeah. No.
That we
No, I don't yeah, I don't have anything about that. So I really think that not just sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow up with what you said, that it does feel as if so many people, young adults and certainly older teens, I've heard this a lot from, is like, well, why would I go tell? Nothing will happen. Nothing's going to
Yeah.
happen to that person. They already know that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, isn't that sad that at that young age that they already know that the system is not going to keep them safe, that nothing's going to happen. I hear that a lot. It makes me
I'll tell you where that comes from. So that comes from school. And my daughter got sent home and I was told that it was going to be classified as sexual assault because she was standing in line in PE with her friends and she pantsed one of her friends, right? As an 11-year-old or 12-year. It wasn't even middle school yet. It was like, 6th grade or 7th grade, something like that. And I said, "Are you kidding me?" Because I knew that there was a boy in school that would keep taking every excuse to shove her where he could touch her chest, and she had told about this repeatedly. He was shoving her down the stairs because he thought it was funny if she wore heels, he could tip her over. And I was like, "Well, what about him?" And the principal just went, "Well, I mean, if you really think that's sexual assault, then you should call the police." And I was like, "You're right, I should." And I did. And I found out from the police that what happens is parents and administrators see it as bullying, and they address it as bullying, and the school only has power to stop bullying. But if it is a crime for an adult to do it to another adult, it is a crime for a child to do it to another child, and you need to call the police. So what's happening is nothing is stopping because we're not calling the police. We're
Right.
telling a grown up who goes, "Oh, boys will be boys," or, "Oh, just ignore that. That means he likes you." All of things are absolute utter trash, and I think it's horribly abusive to say any of those things to our children. But, they go, "Well, what am I supposed to do about it?" Right? Because they don't have the power to stop. If it's a crime, you call the police. If it's bullying, you tell your teacher. And as soon as we called the police, the bullying, quote unquote, the assaults stopped. In fact, the police officer said, if you even make her think that she is threatened by you or that something could happen, if any of your friends say anything to her, if you look at her in a certain way that makes her feel uncomfortable or threatened by you, we are coming back and there will be fines and there will be consequences. And like that is now an escalation and you violated this. It's not really a restraining order, but like what you would do as a child in school. And I think
Yeah.
for 2 years, he couldn't look at her. He absolutely was terrified of my daughter, and she had all the power. So, that sense of powerlessness, I think it's because we don't address it, uh, uh, I don't know what to call it, but, effectively enough, early enough. We pass it off as bullying instead of seeing it for what it really is, which is a crime.
That's really good because I believe that people don't see those things as crimes. Like when you said, if an adult does that to another adult and it's a crime, then when a young person does it to another young person, it's a crime and you call the police.
Mhm.
Another great
Yes.
takeaway from this podcast. So in summary, I think it's also important to not only all of these great takeaways as parents and adults in the lives of children and young people that we're around, but also to remember that there are units that are specifically trained for trafficking, at least at the Las Vegas airport and in other places. And it does not matter the age, the gender, lack of proof. You don't have to have a relationship with the person. If you see something that looks wrong, that something's up, you call, you report it. And at that airport unit, they will not let that person get on the plane unless they can convince them that they are not being trafficked. So I love that. And maybe many airports have something like this. Maybe many police departments in various, international airports would have the same thing. So if you see something, say something, it really matters. And it really matters in your community, within your schools and your school system, within your congregation and within your church. You gotta ask the kinds of questions that kids will say, yeah, that made me feel funny. Yeah, I didn't like that conversation. No, I didn't like when this happened. Or yeah, that what she said to me or what they taught me made me feel funny and sad and hit me sideways. All of those things that we take away from this conversation with Cheryl is amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And
Absolutely.
with that, I guess we'll wait for the next time that we get to see each other.
Yes, yes, I'm excited. I mean, I live in your area and like we said, I felt an instant kinship with you, like we were just immediate close friends. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cheryl.